Good morning again, everyone. We'll just allow a minute or two more for persons to join the seminar. Currently, I'm seeing 7 participants. Good morning, everyone. I am going to be calling this seminar to order. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out to join today's seminar on today's special training seminar for lecturers and administrative staff at UWI on how to relate to persons with disabilities. Today, we'll be targeting members of the Faculty of Social Sciences, and in usual fashion, we will open today's seminar with prayer. So let's get into a posture of reverence. Most righteous and eternal God, we want to thank you for the opportunity today to meet and discuss matters of importance as it relates to persons with disabilities. We want to thank you for everyone who took the time out today to join this call, to participate in this seminar. May the knowledge that is delivered today be useful to each and every one of them and may be applicable in their work environments and any situations that they may come across. All these things we ask in your precious name. All right, so I will be sharing the agenda for those who have not received same as yet. So the next on the agenda item is the welcome and opening remarks by Dr. Heather Ricketts, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences.
Morning, colleagues. Unfortunately, Dr. Ricketts, Dean Ricketts, is not here this morning. My name is Christine Clark, and I'm the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. So I will bring you her welcome and greeting on her behalf. It's my honor to welcome you to this important training session that aims to bring us up to speed with the best practices for interacting with our stakeholders who have disabilities. As we would know, the Faculty of Social Sciences has had several students with disabilities pursuing various degrees, and we have a close working relationship with the Office for Student Service, Special Student Services, to support these students as they transition through the various stages of university life here at Mona. Notwithstanding this, we recognize that we still have some work to do to expand the inclusivity of the educational space, given the recent passage of the Disabilities Act of Jamaica on February 14, 2022. Through this seminar, as you can see from the agenda presented on screen, we hope to provide you with further details on the content and requirements of the Act, highlights of the various services on our campus offered to students and staff with disabilities, explore the concept of reasonable accommodation for students and staff with disabilities. So colleagues, please engage with our presenters and experts. Certainly, we expect that you will share your views regarding implementation, as well as the implications for each of our offices or department offices, as well as our lectures and tutorials and the various other sessions that we'll have throughout the semester, seminars, brown bag lunches, as we return to face-to-face interactions in the upcoming year with both students and staff. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you for delivering the welcome and opening remarks. All right, so we are wasting no time. Dr. Morris today was unavoidably absent, but he will be joining the seminar at a little later. So I have been tasked to give the overview of the special training seminars for lecturers and administrative staff. On February 14, 2022, the government of Jamaica brought into effect the long-past Disabilities Act of Jamaica. This legislation was approved in Parliament in 2014. The legislation seeks to protect persons with disabilities in the island against all forms of discrimination and to allow their meaningful participation and inclusion in society on an equal basis with others. For clarity, persons with disabilities are regarded as individuals with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments which may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with other persons. There are 8 major categories of disabilities: blindness or visual impairment, deafness or hard of hearing, physical, mental, intellectual, speech, learning, and neurological. All of these disabilities impact on the functionality of the individuals with these types of impairments. The Disabilities Act of Jamaica makes it mandatory for education and training institutions to put in place measures to facilitate their participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination against persons with disabilities. Section 26 of the Act speaks to this. The University of the West Indies is the premier education institution in Jamaica, and as such, it must continue to lead by example. In this context, it must ensure that it continues to build on the foundation that it has laid over the past 30 years to facilitate participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination against persons with disabilities. Over the past 30 years, the UWI has put in place varied measures to reasonably accommodate persons with disabilities, starting with the establishment of the Committee for Students with Disabilities in 1991. The institution has become the leading academic institution in terms of care and support for persons with disabilities. This is evidenced by the creation of the Office for Special Student Services that caters to the needs of all students with disabilities. The establishment of a faculty equipped with modern technologies to assist students with disabilities in their learning, a large cadre of volunteers to assist students with disabilities, and special examination accommodation for students with disabilities. Additionally, the UWI has been progressively improving access to physical plant to ensure that individuals with physical disabilities can have greater access. Notwithstanding these efforts by the UWI Mona, significant work needs to be done to ensure that the institution is a fully inclusive educational space. One area that needs urgent attention is that of the attitude of members of staff towards persons with disabilities. Members of staff are social creatures and would have been exposed to negative orientation towards persons with disabilities. The instant responses is to be pitiful on persons with disabilities. This is an approach that is associated with the charity or medical model of disability. But we are now operating in the era of the social and rights-based model of disability. Resiliently, there must be systematic shift in the institution in how persons with disabilities are treated and related to. Thus, the UWI Center for Disabilities, the entity established at the UWI Mona to drive research, training, public education, and advocacy, is conducting these seminars in how to relate to students with disabilities and staff with disabilities in a modern context. The Disabilities Act of Jamaica is now in effect. All education and training institutions are required to implement measures which will redound to the participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination against persons with disabilities. Being the premier academic institution in Jamaica and the institution that has proactively put in place measures to accommodate persons with disabilities, additionally, measures must be formulated to make UWI Mona more inclusive and participatory for students and employees with disabilities. It is for this reason that the UWICDS is conducting these training seminars to sensitize administrative staff and lecturers in how to relate to students and staff with disabilities. Please enjoy and appreciate the information that is being prepared by a distinguished panel, which has a tremendous amount of knowledge on persons with disabilities. Right, so I've given you an overview of the seminar. So we're going to have a running agenda. So we'll move from one agenda item into the next agenda item without pause. So we're immediately moving into the introduction of guest presenters, which will be done by me. My apologies, I did not introduce myself earlier. I'm Shiva Gerson Robinson, Admin Assistant to Senator Dr. Floyd Morris, and I will be your chairperson for today. Our first presenter today, the agenda, we will have to shake the agenda a little to facilitate Mr. Morris' unavoided absence. So originally we would have had him presenting first. However, we will be moving Ms. Sharmali Cardoza Camara to present first after a brief introduction of the presenters. So Mrs. Sharmali Cardoza Camara, you can prepare your presentation in the interim. Mrs. Sharmali Cardoza Camara is an outstanding member of the community of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. She currently serves as the administrator of the Office of Special Student Services. She has occupied this position for close to 8 years. She will be presenting on the services that are available at UWI Mona for students with disabilities.
Good morning, everyone. Madam Moderator, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. I will be doing a PowerPoint presentation. So do I have sharing privileges?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right, let us go. Are you seeing my screen?
No, we're not seeing your screen as yet, Sha.
Oh, no, give me a second, please.
No problem.
Are you seeing my screen now?
No, we're still not seeing your screen, Sharmali.
All right, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong here.
Have you selected the option to share screen?
I did. Give me a second, please. All right, I think I'm getting somewhere with this. Just bear with me a little. Whoa.
Great. We're seeing your screen
now?
Yes, we are.
All right, so I'm at slide 1, right? You're seeing the introduction?
Yes. No, I'm seeing your cover page.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Sorry for all of this. I'm just learning how to use this. You're still seeing, oh, sorry. I might just have to run this. Are you seeing?
Yes, I'm seeing your first page now, Sharmali.
All right, good. So, all right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. I am Sharmali Cardoza Camara, and I'd like to start by saying good morning to our moderator, Mrs. Gersa Robinson, to our esteemed presenters, to the Deputy Dean, and to all of you for being here at this seminar. So my task is to look at the services that we provide. So I'll start by giving a little background on the office. So the Office of Special Student Services came about due to the hard work of individuals, the persistent advocacy and hard work of individuals on the Mona campus. So persons with disabilities were admitted to the University of the West Indies. They were attending classes, they were doing well. However, they weren't receiving the accommodations, the special accommodations that would make them more successful. Not that they were doing bad, but you know, when you have things in place, accommodations in place, then these students will be able to operate at their maximum. And so Professor Mark Figueroa and Dr. Michael Witter saw these students in their classes and decided that, okay, yes, they are getting examination accommodations, but there is still more that can be done for these students with special needs. And so out of their hard work and advocacy, and these are just two of the individuals, but there are many others who would have been a part of this whole movement in terms of getting the Office for Special Student Services where it is today. So out of this advocacy and hard work came the Office for Special Student Services. A committee was developed to drive the whole work of making the office where it is today. So who are we? So the Office for Special Student Services is a unit under the Office of Student Services and Development. The Office for Special Student Services caters to the needs of students with special needs who are registered on the UWI Mona campus. These students, however, have to declare that they have a special needs. And so it's not a force, it's a choice that they make. We cater to students with permanent disabilities, as Ms. Gerso would have mentioned in the introduction. Persons who are blind and visual impaired, persons who are deaf and hard of hearing, persons with physical disabilities, intellectual learning disabilities. But it doesn't only stop there. We also cater to students with temporary disabilities. And I really want to stress the importance of this because especially during the examination period, we have students with limb injuries. We have students as far as chickenpox, pink eye, heavily pregnant, students with anxiety attacks. They can't function in the big exam venues, and so they might need a smaller space to do their exams. And I know, I'm glad that we're having this seminar because I want you lecturers and tutors to know that you can let these students know that they don't have to sit out. Some of them are on their last examination and they just need this one course to finish their exam. And because they have an injury to their limb or to they're heavily pregnant, or they might have chickenpox or pink eye, or just about anything, please advise them to visit their health center, visit the examination section. The information is there. We really and truly don't want persons to have these temporary disabilities and just decide that they're gonna sit out and wait until the next semester to come and finish their exams. We're not all experts at the Special Student Office, but I can say, being at the office since 2011, over 10 years, I have learned how to deal with these temporary disabilities. And so we do a whole, trust me, we are counselors, we are doctors, we are everything when it comes on to accommodating students with varying special needs. So how does a student become registered with a Special Students Office? Once a student receives his or her acceptance to the University of the West Indies, a list is generated by the admission section that really says to us that these students have indicated that they have a special need. The Special Students Office goes through and call these students to verify that they have a special need. Once they verify that they have a special need, we inform them of the services we provide and how to be a part of our system, they must submit a medical report from their doctor. It doesn't stop there. This medical report is sent to the UWI Health Center to be verified by the clinical director at the health center. So we send over this information to the clinical director. Sometimes the students might go directly to the health center, but we encourage them to visit us because we normally provide a cover note and send it directly, because sometimes when they take it to the health center, it gets lost in the system. And so once the health center verifies that this student has a special need and needs special accommodation, the administrative assistant at the Office for Special Student Services meets with this student. And even though we provide general accommodations, we talk to these students on a one-on-one basis to look at their unique situation and how best to serve them. Because one thing is for sure, a person who is blind or visually impaired, a person who is blind does not necessarily need the same accommodation as someone who is visually impaired, because blind is in this context means you cannot see any at all. A person who is visually impaired, they might have little vision or they might have enough vision to get around campus. So you might not easily notify that, you might not easily recognize that this student even is visually impaired. And so the accommodations may vary, because that student might just, the person who is visually impaired might just need to sit at the front of the class. The information that is presented might just need to be in a bigger font, and the list goes on. And so we try to facilitate them on an individual basis as best as possible. And so once we have come to that realization that these students are unique in their own way and have special accommodations, then we register them with the Office for Special Student Services. This registration process goes on right throughout the semester. And I know that some of us as lecturers or admin, you can pick up on whether these students have special needs. And we encourage you to encourage them to come to our office, get the necessary information, because a lot of them sit in the system for so long and are lost in the system. While if they had just received the necessary accommodations, they would have been out in the required time. So I will now look at some of the general services we provide. And the first one I'll look at is interpretation for the deaf and hard of hearing. And so the University of the West Indies, Mona, we have been receiving students who are deaf in, say, starting in the late 2015, thereabouts. We have received students who are deaf. And so what this means is that, trust me, we weren't ready for this. We weren't prepared, we had nothing in place, but remember that we do not accept students based on their disabilities, but based on their academic qualifications. And so when we started this, you know, it was a lot of trial and error. It was challenging, sometimes frustrating for the students, but we were able to sit down, the Office of Student Services and the Special Student Service Office were able to sit down and iron out how we would facilitate these students. And to date, we have one student. She was in the Faculty of Gender and Development Studies, Shanake Goodman, who graduated on the undergrad program. And presently we have a student in the social work program, Maester Robinson, who is doing well. And so we continue to provide the interpretation services necessary for her to achieve her full potential. We also provide mobility sessions where we teach students different routes on campus to different buildings. So these are new students. They may not know the campus. I don't know the campus that well, but I think I know it well enough to orientate these students. So we teach them different routes on campus, depending on the faculties they're in. As a blind student, you will teach them differently from how you teach from how you show a physically challenged person, because for a physically challenged person, you have to show them the route that they would take in terms of using their wheelchair, the more accessible routes. Sometimes it's longer. I know we've come a far way in terms of trying to see how best we can accommodate students with physical disabilities. And we still have work to be done, but we must say kudos to UWI. We have really been doing a good job, and we will continue to be the premier university. So we do provide orientation services to students on the campus. So another service that we provide is we operate as the liaison between the students and the wider campus. So we're basically the middleman, if you want to call it that. So we keep a close contact with the administration, with the lecturers, with the tutors, with the student services managers on behalf of the students. And so one of the things we do each semester is to send out letters to all our lecturers and tutors. This is still a process that we are working to perfect. And some of the challenges that we have in terms of getting these letters out to the lecturers in a timely manner is that students they do not register on time for their courses, or they have challenges registering, or some of them just don't follow the protocols in terms of handing in their registration information on time. One of the good things that came out of the COVID though, because initially we would just walk around to each department and drop off these letters. One of the good things that came out of COVID is that we were able to deliver these letters electronically to the lecturers. Sometimes it poses a challenge because the lecturer's email might not be working. And as lecturers, I know you have a lot of emails to be checking and all of that. So what we do, we keep a close contact with the department if we can't reach the lecturers. So I'm encouraging you all to just look out for those letters from the Office for Special Student Services. You might have a case where a student come to you and say, I am from the Special Students Office, but you might not receive the letter. Just bear with us because sometimes we just have not gotten the lecturer's information from the student to send to you. So as we continue to work on that, I must say that it's going well so far and there's always room for improvement. We also communicate with the administrative office in terms of making sure that especially our students with physical disabilities, their classes are relocated to the ground floor or to classes that are accessible for them, that they're able to maneuver, they're able to access, because not every class on the ground floor is accessible. And I must say that the Faculty of Social Sciences are very cooperative. They act on all of our requests, and we really and truly continue to grow and continue to work on that. Additionally, we provide student volunteers. And I pause here to say that, over the years, we could not have done it on our own. Student volunteers have been very helpful to us. You would say that the clubs and societies on the UWI campus, these clubs and society have taken it up on themselves to say, listen, you have to complete X amount of community service and would like you to do it at the Special Students Office. And so that is how we really and truly got volunteers to be able to assist our students day to day on campus. Sometimes you will see the volunteers taking them to classes. You will see the volunteers acting as scribes. You would see the volunteers just being there for our students. And we really and truly want to say thanks. The pandemic would have dampened that a little, well, a lot, because everyone is online, but we are looking forward to working with our volunteers. We have volunteers who have, they have scholarship hours to complete, for example, the JAM VAT, Ministry of Education, and we also have students from UTech who have their community service program. And so these are the students that we rely on to assist us, to assist our students in and out of the office. We also provide academic support for our students. And out of the Office of Student Services and Development, we have the Academic Support Unit. Now, the Academic Support Unit provides support for students doing math-based courses and English-based courses. And out of that unit, we were able to assist a lot of our students who did econ, who did accounts, and who did and who were pursuing language foundation courses. And so we look forward to continuing this partnership with the Academic Support Unit. Oh, before I move to the technology slide, we also have a partnership with the Language, Linguistics, and Philosophy Unit to assist students who are doing critical Fountain 19, that year-long English course. And so we continue to inform students of these services so that they're able to maximize their true potential. Now, in terms of, oh, sorry. Yes, technology and other aids. The Office for Special Student Services is equipped with computers that have the different speech softwares on them. And so students are able to come in, work with their volunteers and themselves to use these computers. So we have the JAWS, that's a job access with speech. And this computer basically help students to navigate the internet, to do their research, to compile their assignments, and to assist them with just about everything. And so our computers are equipped with this software, and so students and volunteers are able to use this equipment to complete their daily tasks. I'd like to also mention that through Dr. Morris's office, the UWI Center for Disability Studies, he embarked on a project some years ago where all our students with disabilities were able to receive their personal laptops through a laptop project that he did. And I must say that today, this project was very helpful, not only to our students on campus, but to other students at other tertiary institutions, and also to individuals who were employed, who were working. And out of that project, I can say that I was one of the recipients of one of their laptops, and I still have that laptop working with up to today. We also provide examination accommodation for our students with special needs. We work closely with the examination section to provide this service. During the mid-semester period, we work closely with the departments and with the lecturers, also to put together the different examination accommodation for our students with special needs. So, give me a second, please. Yes, so we do provide scribes and invigilators to assist our students during the examination period. And I will pause to say that these scribes and invigilators are postgraduate students, so they must have completed their undergrad degrees. And these invigilators and scribes are vetted by the examination section before we can utilize their services at the Special Students Office. We also provide a space, an examination space. So if by chance you have a student with a special need and you'd like to check in on them during the examination period, these students are facilitated at the Office for Special Student Services, and we're right beside Jamaica National on the Ring Road. So sometimes they have questions or they have queries, and we have to reach out to the examination section, which in turn reach out to the lecturers. There are some lecturers that stops by and look at their students, and we continue to encourage you to do so once you know that there's a student in your class with a special need. We also provide computers for students who will prefer to type their examinations. We do provide computers so that students are able to type their examination if that's how they feel better to do their exams. We also give students with special needs additional time to complete their exams. And so students are able to manage their time and to complete their exam. This is a very quiet space. And so if we should experience any challenges, we always take the feedback from our students and improve upon our service delivery during exam time. We know it's a very stressful time, and so we try our best to accommodate our students. We also, let me say, the Office of Student Financing also provide scholarships and grants to students with special needs. And so through the different companies that would have offered scholarships and grants, there are some scholarships that are reserved for students with special need. One such is the Keith Peart Scholarship, and that's through the Lions Club of Mona. You have the UWICDS, you have the Digital Foundation, just to name a few. And Dr. Morris, through his kind donation, offers a book grant to the student with the highest GPA each year in the Faculty of Social Sciences. And so we continue to grow on these scholarship opportunities. We continue to inform our students of these scholarship opportunities. And so because we do have also at the Jamaica Society for the Blind, the Marlon King Scholarship for Students with Special Needs, and the Jamaica Society for the Blind Scholarship for a student with special needs. The Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities also offer the Margaret Moody Scholarship for students with disabilities. And so we continue to give our students these necessary information because, you know, financially it's stressing on all of us. And so we try to ensure that none of our students really drop out, but they do their best to complete their study. So in looking at the Disabilities Act, Section 26 would have spoken about educational institutions and the accommodations that should be put in place for students with special needs. And if we should look at UWI, the first thing here, sorry. So it's saying that an educational institution should not deny a person with a disability access based on their disability. And if we should look at our noble institution, our premier institution, we can safely say that we have never come across a situation, or I have not heard of a situation where a student is denied access to the university based on their disability. I will not say it does not exist, but as far as I can say, I can say that UWI Mona we have not heard of any situation. And so we are treading in the right direction, and we'll continue to tread in that direction, not to deny anyone the opportunity to receive the quality education that we offer. In terms of providing the support that is necessary for each of our students to function, we can definitely say that we are not 100% there, but we try our best in whichever areas to ensure that we try to accommodate our students as best as possible. And even if we do not have the resources, we try to steer them in the direction where the resources are available for them to maximize their true potential. And this just reinforces, this slide reinforces our continued support that we provide for our students in whichever way we can. So before I conclude, I must say that presently we have 39 students with disabilities registered at the Office for Special Student Services. And out of the 39 students, 13 students are from the Faculty of Social Sciences. And over the years, we've continued to have the highest number of students registered at the Office of Special Student Services. The majority of our students are from the Faculty of Social Sciences, which means that the Faculty of Social Sciences must be doing something that keeps these students wanting to come back for more. I'd also like to congratulate the Faculty of Social Sciences. We just had a student graduating with a double major, a blind student graduating with a double major in economics and banking and financing. And that's a blind student in the Faculty of Social Sciences. So we do have the work continuing, and we do have the first-class graduates to show that the Faculty of Social Sciences is definitely moving in the right direction. And so as I conclude, I must commend the UWI Mona for the work that we continue to do in accommodating our students with special needs. And I must commend the Faculty of Social Sciences for continuing to accommodate our students with special needs. And as we do so, we just want to continue to allow our students to come to the university to achieve their true potential and make Jamaica a place to live, raise family, and do business. I thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation, Shamali. I know it was well received. It was very engaging, was very informative. I am often at the Center for Disability Studies and at the Office of Special Services, and some of these things I learned today, and I'll definitely be sharing some of the information that I get with my fellow colleagues when I start my master's program. So we'll move into the section of questions and answers. And I'm seeing a question in the chat already. So we'll have a 15-minute question and answer. If we don't need that time, we will move into the next presentation. But the first question I'm seeing here by Shara Williams Lou is, how can we volunteer, and can members of questions, and can members of staff volunteer?
Most definitely. We have over the years had staff members taking time out to volunteer, because when we go back face to face, the office really and truly opens from 8:30 to 7 p.m. And so we do welcome staff members to volunteer. Everybody.
Check in the chat if there are any other questions. Once you raise your hand, you'll be acknowledged, or you can send a note in the chat. All right, we have a question from Gillian Mason. He says, along with sending letters directly to lecturers or tutors, has the center considered giving students a letter to share with their lecturers, not to replace your current effort, but to complement it?
Most definitely, I do welcome that suggestion. And I must say I do welcome that suggestion, because as I said, sometimes when we do send the emails, you know, I know lecturers have a lot to check and a lot to go through. And so I welcome that. I welcome that suggestion.
Do we have any more questions? Any feedback? Any suggestions that you'd like to give? We always welcome suggestions because we're
Yes,
in the
we
business
do.
of improving self day by day. All right. So with no further questions, we are going to be moving to our next presenter, who is no stranger to the disability community, Professor Marcus Sheffer, who is one of the leading constitutional and disability law experts in this world. He is from Switzerland and has a distinguished member of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. He was recently re-elected to serve a second term on this special and significant UN body. Professor Schiffer will be presenting on the topic of reasonable accommodations and the education of persons with disabilities. Mr. Schiffer, take it away. Professor Schiffer? He was here earlier. We seem to have gotten dropped off the call. Just allow me a moment to see if I can reach out to him. All right. Good morning again, everyone. Apologies for the inconvenience. Mr. Sheffer seems to have gotten disconnected. In the interim, I am going to ask Miss Gloria Goff to present. So we're working to get her online because she had some challenges joining. So we do apologize for the inconvenience. Just bear with us a few minutes to sort out this technical difficulty. anything that can happen will happen, and that was evident this morning. But nevertheless, we pivot and we get the show on the road. So Dr. Morris. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am ready when you are.
Okay, I'll be bringing up your presentation on the screen right now.
Okay. So you're ready for me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Pleasant, good morning to all the members of the Faculty of Social Sciences that are present. And I want to take this opportunity to add my quota of welcome to you for this seminar on understanding how to relate to persons with disabilities in the context of education and employment. And for my presentation, I will be focusing on the issue of the Disabilities Act 2014 and its implication for persons with disabilities in the context of education and employment. Let me take this opportunity to welcome all the participants to this special seminar designed to give greater insights on the legislation that has been formulated to protect the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. This legislation was enacted in 2014, having gone through a long process of consultation, starting from 2004, when I was Minister of State in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. I was extremely committed then, as I am now, to ensuring that persons with disabilities are included, allowed to participate, and not discriminated against in the Jamaican society. This legislation will do all of this, and you are the ones who have to ensure that these goals are realized and persons with disabilities receive the benefits. The legislation is anchored in the human rights model of disability. Persons with disabilities under this model are viewed as rights holders and are therefore subject to all the fundamental rights and freedoms entrenched in the diverse international human rights treaties. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that was signed and ratified by Jamaica in 2007 is the gold standard for this human rights model and is a feature of the Disabilities Act 2014. The object of the act are reinforce and promote the recognition and acceptance that Jamaica, one second, please, one second. Sorry about that. B, promote individual dignity and individual autonomy, including the freedom of choice and independence of a person with disability. C, ensure effective participation and inclusion in the society for persons with disabilities on an equal basis with others. D, prevent or prohibit discrimination against a person with a disability and promote respect for differences and acceptance of persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity. The legislation carries 11 parts and 51 sections. For the purpose of this presentation, however, we will not go through every single section. However, we will delve into the most essential features of the Act to show how it will benefit persons with disabilities. So, join with me for the next few minutes as I delineate the salient points of the legislation. We will finalize on some questions and answers on this legislation and how it will transform and empower persons with disabilities through education and training and employment. Section 2 of the Act, which deals with interpretation, gives the definition of the diverse terms and concepts used in the Act. For the purpose of this presentation, I will focus on the definition for access, discrimination, persons with disabilities, and reasonable accommodation. And you will hear more about reasonable accommodation from Professor Marcus Schiffer when we get him on the system. Access, according to the legislation, include in relation to A, premises, freedom to enter in, approach, communicate with, make use of, or maneuver within any premises. That is what access is about in the context of premises. Discrimination means any distinction, exclusion, or restriction on the basis of disability, which has the purpose or the effect of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise on an equal basis with others of privileges, legal interests, rights, benefits, and treatments in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, religious, educational, or any other field, and include all forms of discrimination, including denial of reasonable arrangements, which is in the is a similar term for reasonable accommodation. Persons with disabilities, or where the context requires persons with a disability, includes a person who has a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment which may hinder his or her full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with other persons. Reasonable arrangement means the necessary and appropriate modification and adjustment, not imposing a disproportionate or undue burden where needed in a particular case to ensure to a person with a disability the enjoyment or exercise on an equal basis with others of privileges, interests, benefits, and treatments, and to the facilitation of such privileges, interests, benefits, and treatments by the provision of auxiliary aids and services, including A, equipment or devices that alleviate the effects of a disability being experienced by a person. B, the acquisition or modification of such equipment or devices. C, duly qualified interpreters, technologies, and effective methods of making orally delivered and received materials available to a person with a disability. And D, duly qualified readers, taped audio-visual recorded text or other effective methods of making visually delivered and received available materials to a person with a disability. It is extremely important that we learn and understand the terms and concepts. We have to be able to relate to them on a daily basis, and therefore, knowledge of them is foundational. Part 2 deals with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. Section 5 establishes the JCPD as a body corporate. What this means is that the organization will function as a statutory entity with its own seal. It will have the right to hire staff as it sees fit and to govern its proceedings. Importantly, it will have command over its own budget, and therefore services offered by the new entity should be more efficient. Currently, it takes over a year to get some benefits from the existing JCPD. This is because they have to go through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security to get things done. But under the new regime, this will change. And once the resources are available, then persons with disabilities should be able to get benefits more expeditiously. Section 9 of the Act gives the authority of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities to formulate codes of practice for the prevention of discrimination against persons with disabilities. It states the council shall A, prepare codes of practice for guidance on matters under this act, and B, review those codes of practice and where appropriate, make alterations thereto. And each such code of practice shall be laid on the table of each House of Parliament. And I will highlight some more on the codes of practice for employment and education that have been formulated a little later on in my presentation. Section 13 of the Act mandates that the council must maintain a confidential register. This register shall contain all persons with disabilities in Jamaica, and I urge all members, individuals who are on this platform and have a disability or know of somebody with a disability to get these individuals registered, because it's very critical in terms of provision of services for persons with disabilities. Section 14 of the Act stipulates that a person with a disability or a caregiver can register individuals with a disability. The person with disability or the caregiver must complete the application in the prescribed manner. The prescribed manner is set out in the respective forms in the regulations governing the Act. Part 3 of the Act deals with the Disability Rights Tribunal. Specifically, Section 15 of the Act establishes the tribunal, which is called the Disability Rights Tribunal. This is a tribunal that will have the right to hear matters relating to the discrimination of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. Its constitution is set out in the 3rd schedule, and the minister with responsibility for persons with disabilities in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security has the authority to appoint the members of the tribunal, subject to the provisions set out in the Act. Section 16 gives the authority to a person with a disability or a caregiver to lodge a complaint to the JCPD if there is a perceived violation of the rights of an individual with a disability. This can be done no later than 2 years after the occurrence of the violation. It must be noted that the complaint must be taken to the council for investigation to be done. And I want to point out here that this is a unique feature in the law in the Commonwealth Caribbean. And I've been searching to see if this feature is anywhere in the Commonwealth where a disability rights tribunal has been established to give persons with disabilities this sort of facility to have their grouses or grievance heard when it comes on to the violation of their rights. It's a very unique feature, and individuals have to be conscious that it has been prescribed in the law to make sure that persons with disabilities are not discriminated at the workplace or in educational institution or any other spheres of the Jamaican society. Just, okay. The legislation requires that the JCPD must take action with regards to any complaint that is brought to it by a person with a disability or caregiver. Section 18(2) speaks to this. It states, 2, the council shall, with respect to a complaint made under section 16(a), refer the complaint to the tribunal for determination, or B, with the consent of the parties named in the complaint, refer the complaint for alternative dispute resolution. So the matter can be referred to the Disability Rights Tribunal, or if there is some grievance with, say, a student or an employee at the university, the person can opt for an alternative mechanism, which is an alternate dispute mechanism. A person with a disability can bring the matter to the court based on a decision made by the DRT. In this regard, the JCPD may give support to the person with disability as outlined in section 22 of the Act. Part 4 of the Act deals with discrimination against persons with disabilities. Section 25 expressly states a person with disability shall not, by reason of such disability, be subject to any form of discrimination. Part 5 of the Act, which covers sections 26 to 28, deals with the situation of education, among other things. The Act frowns upon any practice of discrimination and against persons with disabilities in education. Section 26 states, 1, an education or training institution shall not deny a person with a disability from being enrolled or attending the institution by reason of their disability. 2, an educational or training institution shall provide the support necessary to ensure that in relation to the institution, a person with a disability, A, has the most reasonable access to the education or training provided, B, has access to facilities in the least restrictive environment and best suited to individual needs, C, being a student of the institution is not, in relation to student services provided, placed at a disadvantage, and D, is provided with reasonable arrangement and receives the support required to effectively facilitate his or her education. Well, the law actually says his education, but because the legislation in the Commonwealth is very gender insensitive, and it's a matter that we need to correct. 2, each caregiver shall, as far as practicable, monitor the circumstances of a person with a disability in their care in order to ensure that the person is not subject to discrimination, and B, where necessary, file a complaint with the council in relation to a person with a disability subject to discrimination in the provision of education and training. 3, an education, and this is subsection 3, an educational or training institution shall have regard to the provision of any applicable code of practice issued by the council under section 9 and take reasonable steps to comply therewith. Subsection 4, for the purposes of this section, educational or training institution means a private institution or public institution which is engaged in the imparting of knowledge or skills. So it is both applicable to private and public institutions that are providing knowledge, the transferal of knowledge to individuals. Part 6 of the Act, which covered sections 29 to 31, deals with the issue of employment of persons with disabilities. The law frowns upon discrimination against persons with disabilities as manifested in sections 29 and section 31, which is most significant in light of practice in the labor market. It deals with the situation of an employee developing a disability on the job and how it should be treated. It states where an employee has become disabled, whether by virtue of his employment or otherwise, and that employee is no longer capable of executing the task required by his contract of employment, and so far as there is no disproportionate or undue burden, the employer should redeploy the employee to a position that A, is commensurate with the current skills and abilities of the employee, and B, does not result in loss or remuneration and benefits to the employee. I will also indicate to you that the Act, as I pointed out, speaks to the establishment of codes of practice for persons with disabilities, and there are 3 codes of practice that have been developed thus far. And in the context of this presentation, education and training, there's a code of practice for employment and trading, and it is designed to prevent discrimination against persons with disabilities, because a part of the understanding of how to relate to persons with disabilities is an acceptance that for years we have operated and functioned in an environment that is very isolatory for persons with disabilities, but we are moving now to full inclusion. And so we have to outline what are the things to do and not to do in preventing discrimination against these individuals. So the code of practice for education has been formulated and subject to be ratified by the board and then taken to Parliament for final approval. Likewise, that for employment has been developed to guide and set standards for the prevention of discrimination against persons with disabilities at the workplace. Finally, I want to point out that the codes of practice, the legislation makes provision for penalties to be imposed if the different provisions of the Act are violated. So if you should obstruct, for example, an officer from the JCPD in the execution of their investigation, that is a matter that attracts a penalty, and you can be subject to serious charge in the courts of law. So for violations, there are penalties. It's not a legislation that operates without teeth. So if you violate, you must be prepared to stand the consequences. So the Disabilities Act 2014 has been formulated primarily to facilitate the participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. And the University of the West Indies, that is one of the leading institutions in terms of education for persons with disabilities, must ensure that its services are on par and up to standard in terms of inclusion and participation and non-discrimination against persons with disabilities. The foundation has been laid at the institution via the various services that have been provided for students with disabilities over the years. It is just to modernize and to build on what is there and to make sure that the University of the West Indies become a model institution in the Caribbean in terms of how to relate with persons with disabilities. I thank you. I make myself available for some questions now, Ms. Gerson. Hello? Ms. Gerson?
My apologies, my mic was not unmuted. We want to thank you, Dr. Morris, for your lovely presentation today. We know it was well received. For persons who may not be aware, who have been living under a rock and not be aware of who the esteemed Senator Dr. Floyd Morris is, Senator Dr. Floyd Morris is another outstanding and distinguished member of the community of persons with disability. He's a member of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability and is currently the director at the Center for Disability Studies. So Senator Dr. Morris will now make himself available for question and answers for a 15-minute period. Thank you.
Any question?
You can proceed to raise your hand or you can put it in the chat and I will release you.
There are no questions?
No, it doesn't seem that way, Mr. Morris. I believe you answered all questions in your presentation as it was very clear and concise. So what we will proceed to do is to move to our next presenter, who I'm seeing online, Miss Gloria Goff. Miss Gloria Goff, are you with us?
Ask her to unmute her mic.
Hello.
Okay, great. So,
Hello, good morning.
all right, Gloria, we're hearing you. We're hearing you.
Oh, okay.
All right, so Miss Gloria Goff is a prominent and distinguished member of the community of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. She She currently serves as the Executive Director of the Combined Disabilities Association. She has a wide array of experiences on the subject of disability and is one of the leading advocates in the Caribbean on the subject. Ms. Goff will present today on how to relate to students and employees with disabilities. Ms. Goff, take it away.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Are you screen sharing, Miss? Are you screen sharing?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I am Gloria Goff, as our moderator just mentioned, and I'm going to take you through some of the issues, some of the things, some of the simple things that you should look out for, and some of the more complex things that you need to be aware of in order to interact comfortably with persons with disabilities. And on the screen, you might notice that I have called it, titled it, Knowledge is Key in Interacting with Persons with Disabilities. And because sometimes people think you have to interact with us. You have to be careful what you say, you have to be careful what you do, and so on. Of course, it's important to know the correct things to do, but you can speak with us just as you would speak with anybody else. There are certain things that we don't mention, that we don't use, like terminologies and so. Time would not allow me to go through all of that. So now I'm going to begin by looking at our objectives. And we really have objectives today. And one of them is to state that you will have a better understanding of interacting with persons with disabilities. You will be more responsive to persons with disabilities, be more knowledgeable of sighted guiding techniques. And when we get there, you might wonder why. Why sighted guiding techniques? What about other techniques? Of course, you learn about others, but there are some peculiarities that you might not know and some particulars that you might not. Okay, so I begin by just saying that persons with disabilities are usually seen in case of religion, myths, culture. And in terms of religion, it's how first time we were viewed as people who were beggars, blind persons, for example, or persons with physical disabilities. And, you know, symptoms are results of some sins committed. But we are past that now. But we still have some. Then we look at myths, you know, and culture. And in terms of the myths, we think of, you know, things like if you have a person with a disability and the mother is pregnant, then she should not be sorry for the other. The slide isn't moving. Anyway, the other person should be should not get pregnant, because should not be sorry for the person, or their child will become pregnant, or the child will become disabled. And thirdly, you look at things like culture. Is the slide moving? So if the culture is that the person, if you're pregnant and you look at somebody who's pregnant and you and the person has a disability, see somebody with a disability and you're sorry for them, then the child might become disabled. Self-perception is that some people with disabilities look at themselves, they have low self-esteem based on how society treats them. But of course, there are those of us who are upbeat, who are full of self-confidence and self-esteem, but it has a lot to do with how we are viewed, how we are perceived, and how people treat us. And of course, the next thing we have to look at is, you know, like types of disability, and I won't go into the details, but just to state the major ones with speech and hearing, those persons are usually impaired or hard of hearing. We have difficulty with learning, and that would be intellectual disabilities and learning disabilities. We have difficulty with vision, and that would be movement or mobility challenges. And those are persons who are classified under the physical. We also have hidden disabilities and people with epilepsy, you know, people with autism. Hidden disabilities are, you would not look at a person and know that the person has a disability. And this also applies to a deaf person whose deafness, who doesn't wear a hearing aid, and unless you see them, you wouldn't recognize that there's a difficulty. And persons who have visual problems, who maybe wear glasses, but they are not thick lens, or maybe their eyes don't look any way, and they're sitting down or standing, and they are able to see. So we're going to begin now the whole issue of looking at specific disabilities and what you should know about that disabilities and interacting with them. So hearing impairment, we have hearing and we have deafness. And in hard of hearing, we're talking about persons who can have a, refers to partial loss of hearing, the ability to hear in one or both ears. So the level can be mild or moderate. In terms of deafness, we're talking about complete loss of ability to hear, right? In both ears. So how do you interact with these persons? First of all, you have to take a moment to, to identify any visual clues for communication with this person. So if you see somebody signing or somebody, whenever they're looking at something and they bow their heads and sort of bend it, you might say, oh, that's how they say yes. But do not try to develop these for yourself. Learn them. And if you're unable to communicate with them in that way, write short notes, no lengths, your name. You can just put your name, right? Where do you go to school? You can just put school. So I'm just saying, if you're not sure of how to communicate with these persons, if you're on the campus, for example, and you meet a deaf person, you want to know which, maybe you could just write faculty or program you're studying. Don't go into any lengthy writing. I'm not implying that they cannot read lengthy documents or lengthy statements, but the bottom line is to get them to use a short number of words as possible in the communication, because you do not know sign language. If you're in a public area and there are many distractions there and the person is hard of hearing, you cannot really with that person because you might have to be shouting. And for the hard of hearing person, shouting doesn't really go well with them. And if they're having hearing aid, it can create a feedback. So we're not saying you have to, your voice a little, but instead of doing that in a crowded space, you take them, as Jamaicans would say, you take them one side and then you will talk to them or write to them. Because remember, hard of hearing have different levels as well. So you have to hear once they're close enough to you, and some might lip read. Do not assume though that everybody who is deaf lip reads, because that's not true. I understand that it could be only 33% of those persons really actually lip read well. And some of us pronounce words different, and our accent causes us to, shape our mouths, lips are shaped different to pronounce words. Because I, as a Jamaican, might just say now. A person who is English might say now. So the mouth is wider, and the deaf person might only be used to speaking with somebody who speaks Jamaican. That's just a simple example for you to look at. But observe the signs that they use. They have a whole lot of facial expressions, hand movement, body movement. I mean, deaf persons, when they sign, especially when they use Jamaican sign language, oh my, sometimes it's like a dance, right? So you have to understand somebody who knows to help or right. Observe how you indicate yes or no, because sometimes they might point to ask you if you're going somewhere, and then if you want to say yes or no and you don't know how to say it, keep noticing a deaf person when they are conversing, especially with somebody who is not deaf. And the questions are asked, and notice how they say yes, no, those simple things. The other thing is ask questions one at a time. So if you're conversing with a person who is deaf, but they can lip read or they can speak, because some deaf persons can have speech, yes. Do not ask all your questions one time. Which faculty are you in? What courses are you, what course or study are you pursuing? Ask the question, what faculty? Which course? Ask, and short sentences, as I said before, speak slowly and look directly at the person, right? So if you look directly at the person, you cannot be talking to a deaf person and turn sideways, and because you don't know sign language, you have to be looking at them, giving them the eye contact. And just like in the classroom, they will be focusing on the screen where if you're projecting a PowerPoint projection or whatever the lecturer is using. But if the lecturer is speaking directly to the audience, it is very clear that they have to focus so that the person who is hearing, who is hard of hearing, can understand what is going on. And you might wonder why I'm using the term hard of hearing. It is because the persons in Jamaica, deaf persons on a whole have a deaf culture, and they do not like to be called hearing impaired, because as far as they're concerned, there's nothing wrong with them. An impairment means something wrong, you need to be fixed. Only time they accept it is if it's a doctor who is looking after them, they will accept it that time, an impairment. But other than that, they prefer to be referred to as deaf. They're proud of being deaf. And if they have a hearing challenge, but they hear a little, they don't mind being called hard of hearing. Be careful of finishing their sentences. Ask the individual to repeat. If the person has speech but do not speak clearly, and you are not sure of what the person says, ask them to repeat. Get their attention by clapping. So somebody you want to get the attention of a deaf person, you can clap loudly just in case that person has some level of hearing or maybe just some vibration. So you clap to get their attention because they might not be looking at you. Or you can stamp your feet, especially if the floor is wooden, because the vibration from that wooden floor would attract their attention for them to look around. Wave to them if they're looking at you. So I need you to talk to me now. All right? If the person is walking in front of you and you want to get their attention, then somebody coming towards you, you cannot stay behind them and call to them. So somebody coming towards you, you can say, Miss, can you touch that gentleman's shoulder or arm for me? And then that person will stop and do that. Or if the person is walking closer beside them than you, then you can ask that person to touch the person on their shoulder. Never touch the person in their head or walk and touch a deaf person in their back, because they might not know what is happening behind them and might turn around suddenly, and there is some contact with you that is a little more painful than you would expect. Now, body language is critical. Eye contact, proper facial expression, proper lighting, visuals, all those make a difference to a person who is deaf. And keep in mind also that you might be frowning at something that you just crossed your mind, but you were conversing with a deaf person. That person might think that frown is directed at them. They might have done or said something that offends you. So make sure that, when you're speaking with them, if something even comes to you that upsets you and you're not going to be able to explain why, try and keep it off your face, right? With recognition of a hard of hearing student, the lecturer needs to elevate their voice. No need to shout, but voice elevation or projection is important. Now we're going to look at physical disabilities, and I'm going through pretty quickly because of time constraints. So I hope you are able to follow from the slides. So we're looking at, and you will notice that there's a picture of someone in a wheelchair, right? Yes, at this point. So physical impairment or physical disability, it refers to an individual who has a physical condition that limits his or her mobility. You know, it's people with motor impairment. And those persons mean, like, you know, I don't think I need to explain to this group what it means, but it means you can be unable to walk or walk with the support of assistive devices like crutches or canes. You might have to use a wheelchair, or you can lose an arm, or you might just be unable to turn your head at all. So you have to turn your whole body, right? So let us look at some of the key points to deal with this group. First of all, the wheelchair is a person's personal space. So you shouldn't be leaning on it. You know, so if you're assisting a person in a wheelchair and you have to stop somewhere, you should not lean on the wheelchair, because something might go wrong with the brakes and the wheelchair moves suddenly and you fall, or it causes the wheelchair to tilt, both of you, and injuring the person in the wheelchair and yourself. So do not lean on it. Even if you're tired, your legs are tired, hold on to the wheelchair, but don't lean on it. If you're talking with a person in a wheelchair, you should not have to stoop down. Stoop, I mean, you only can stoop down, right? You shouldn't have to speak with the person. You should just place your eye, your look at the person at you know, eye level, you know, to keep the conversation. You may sit beside the person if it is the person is stationary. The person, of course, by all means, sit, but you don't have to. But you can speak to a person who is sitting in a wheelchair without having to stoop or bend, right? It is not necessary to stoop, as I said before. Simply make eye contact and converse. Never patronize a wheelchair user by patting them on the head, or, you know, sometimes people think that to show that, oh, we are friends, or I understand, but it also shows that you're in sympathy with the person. Okay, and you pat the shoulder, or because the person is sitting and therefore they're not face to face the shoulder or pat the head. It's not necessary. You can hold the person's hand if you need to make that kind of contact. Never push a person's wheelchair without his or her permission. No, because sometimes people will come, for example, you might be in a campus and you're in a corridor. Somebody needs to pass and you're in the corridor waiting on somebody to come from an office or to give you something. Sometimes, although you should be quite unaware that maybe you might not have parked your wheelchair properly, so there is not enough space. That's like how you would do with a person who is not disabled and they're standing in the way. Say, excuse me, and the person will be able to move the wheelchair on the road. Then they will ask you to assist them, or you could offer to assist, but do not just simply shift the wheelchair out of the way. They do that with blind persons sometimes, just kind of easier way rather than even speaking to you. Ensure a clear path for the travel of wheelchairs. So if you're meeting as a group on campus, or you're setting up a group of students in a formation, you have to ensure that there's enough space for the wheelchair to be maneuvered within the space, right? Offer assistance if the individual appears to be having difficulty open a door. So somebody in a wheelchair, a student, may be coming out of an office or a classroom or somewhere that the door is closed. And the person might be having difficulty because of the weight of the door or the stiffness of the door. Don't just go and open the door for the person. They might be grateful, but when you just simply move the door, it could cause some challenges for the person who might be trying to open it themselves. So can I help you? Or can I assist you in opening the door? Something to that effect. That's simple, and it's something that they would appreciate. Now, this is something else that persons have experienced. Somebody who has one arm, be it a male or female, might be talking to somebody and greeting somebody, they do not extend their hand to shake because maybe it might be the right hand missing. And culturally, we have been taught to shake with right hands. You putting our right hand to the other person's right hand. If the person only has a left hand, shake the left hand. Offer to shake, right? If the person is unable to shake your hand, they will let you know. But do not assume that, because there have been people who put forward their hand to shake and they realize that the right hand is missing. Oh, inadvertently, they kind of look shocked and they pull back their hand. No, extend to the left hand. That hand can shake. Now we're going to be looking at blindness. And blindness and visual impairment. Blindness refers to a visual acuity of 20/200. You know, that means what you can see at 200 yards, I might only be able to see at 20. And that is in the better eye, because sometimes people have visual problem with both eyes, right? And it's really, though, in simple terms, 10% of what you are supposed to have, normally have. Those are the persons that are considered blind. So if legally blind. So if you only have 10%, you know, or you can look at somebody who can maybe see a shadow, but not able, or a person, because they have on a color that they might be able to see, but they're not able to describe the person's features, right? So they're unable to discern the feature. So they might see somebody, but not able to say that is Jane or John. Unless they speak to them, then they will hear the voice. Visual impairment refers to persons who have limited amount of sight. They might be able to move around in an environment that they're familiar with, or if they're not familiar, they'll move a little slower. They might be able to pick up obstacles, especially that are kind of very a little high off the ground. But they might still slip on stairs if there is not enough. The color of the staircase does not allow them to discern the difference between one step and the other. But they often do not use the white cane except when they're crossing roads. And you will see a picture of someone walking with a white cane, right there. Okay. Now let's look at the do's and the key points now. And this is kind of upon meeting a blind person, especially some identify yourself. So you're going to meet the person and you say, hi, I am Patricia. Hi, I am Jimmy, right? So you meet, so the person, that voice that you speak to the person, when you meet that person already, I'm not saying they're going to immediately remember you, but it might click in their head that yes, that voice sounds familiar. But more often that they see you and meet you, you won't even have to say, this is Jimmy. If you're meeting them for the second time though, and they do not recall who it is, just don't say hi. Just say, hi, this is Jimmy. And you have to remind them of the context. You know, we met at the UWI conference last year. You know, we met at the UWI Center for Disability Studies, and I was reading to somebody, something to that effect. You know, and the lecturer who taught you research methods or something like that. If you have met before, as I said, remind them of the context, right? Because they won't have the visual clue. Somebody who can see will remember, oh yes, I remember this tall, you know, guy with a beautiful brown, with a handsome face, or this girl with the beautiful brown eyes or something. But the blind person will not see all of that. They might remember your voice. Okay, speak directly to the individual when you approach him or her. State clearly who you are. Speak in a normal tone of voice. Somehow people believe that you either have to speak to us. Hi, I am John, or hi, I am Peaches, or something like that. No, just speak. Or they might change the voice if they know you before. Yeah, they might disguise their voice and ask you to guess who it is. You know, a male might say, when they're tricking you. We don't really appreciate that, honestly, especially when you're doing it in front of other people. It's annoying because I'm going to say, oh, this is maybe a female when it's a male, or a male when it's a female. We don't really appreciate that. You don't need to go there. And it's frustrating too. So the next thing you need to remember is that when you're conversing in a group, and that happens a lot on the campus, especially in study groups, or just meeting somebody on the library, right? At the library steps or so on, a lot of people are talking, or a group of you met before and everybody's chatting. When you are conversing in a group, identify yourself, especially if the person doesn't know you before. I am, Shavane. I am Shavane, the president of the student council, or whatever it is. And if you're speaking to Gloria, and because there are a lot of people there, and people chat around everybody. So if you want to direct a question to me, for example, because I'm a person with blind, say Gloria so and so that I can respond appropriately. Because sometimes we have blind persons, we might hear somebody even saying something on their phone, and because we were talking to the person before, we might be responding. If I had time, I could give you jokes about that. People are passing me and saying good morning, and I say good morning when it's somebody on the phone they're talking to. So it will be good if we know who is talking to us, so that we can respond accordingly. The lecturer, for example, might be saying something to me and might be looking at me, and asking the question, but I'm not sure. So I'm not going to be responding unless it is directly. Describe activities and surroundings. So if you're walking, let's say you're on the campus, and especially if the student is new, or if you work with the person and the person is new, and you're passing an area that the person is not familiar with, you can say, when you're walking, remember, don't walk so much to the left because there is a ditch there, or somebody's always parked there, or stuff. Describe the surroundings so that you're aware of it. Be descriptive when giving directions. But when you're giving a blind person directions, you have to give this direction in landmarks. So I'm asking you for a direction to get to class at SSLT. You can't just say, go down there, turn left, and then turn right. A blind person, because the sign is there, but I won't be able to see the sign, and I'm going for the first time. So you have to tell me now, walk on this corridor. It's not, when your cane touches the first walkway, don't turn there. But the next walkway, you can turn left. And then go down until you feel this, where the road gets a little rougher, or the path gets a little rough. Then feel, and there are some plants there, past the plants, and then that walkway you turn. So I'm just saying that you have to be a little more descriptive than when you're talking to somebody who is able to see. Do not assume that an assistant is a relative or a friend. So people have a way of addressing our assistant. What is it she wants? So somebody goes with you to the library, and the librarian say, what is it she wants? The person is just assisting me into the library. They don't know what I'm there for, whether I'm to give back a book, request a book, use a machine or something, or see someone. So you address the person who is talking to you, because the blind person will ask the question. And again, if I had time, I would give you some examples of that. But later on, if we have the time, do not take the blind person's cane. Sometimes we're walking with somebody on the campus and they say, put up the cane, man, or give me the cane, right? But when you take my cane, anything happens, my cane might be missing, meaning that I gave an example once. This is for downtown. I'm walking with somebody and they say, take my cane. Let me hold the cane for you, and I'll walk with you. You don't need a cane because there are too many people. But yet still, the person is walking with you. They might hear a gunshot or see crowd running. And for personal survival or for self-preservation, they might run with your cane and leave you stranded. You can't move because you don't have your cane. It's always important to if you're taking the person's cane and the person is seated, tell the person where you have put the cane, or allow the person to put the cane there themselves. Tell individuals when you're leaving. So you're walking with somebody and you're going to be moving away. You say to the person, anyway, I'm going to be going down to the KFC. So you don't just walk away from the person. And if it's somebody you have to be assisting and you have to move away, do not just leave the person standing, right? You have to put the person somewhere where they can hold on to something or lean against something. Just stay right here until I get back and tell them where they are. Because somebody might call them, and if they are not familiar with the environment, tell them, oh, you're right against the Office for Special Students. Oh, you're at the Taylor Hall gate or Irving Hall entrance or something. If ensure that in a lecture, that if you are delivering a lesson, that and you have to do, there's a table, right? Because, you know, especially with statistical courses, mathematical courses, you might be describing a formula or whatever, and you might be laying out things in columns and rows. You can't just say, the first, if you compare in brackets, the number 450 in brackets and go to the left column and compare it with the number over there that says 300, or add it to 355. Then when you come down, this figure over there has to change. Now the blind person in the class is the class. Which is this figure? What is the one in it's over there? You know, and which column are we in? Which row are we in? So we have to ensure that we are being more specific. And if you find you're a lecturer in these courses and the person is not following, then the person needs to be assigned someone directly to assist them. We are very resilient, you know. So sometimes we actually go and seek out somebody who can assist us. But if the person has a challenge identifying that person, be willing to have that discussion with them. I remember I was not good at stats and I had to do that. Get somebody who can sit with me so that I can braille and realize when they say this column or this symbol right here, I understand it. So you have to be descriptive, as the next slide say, when you're looking at graphs, photographs, you're showing a graph, you have to be, you can't just look at graph number 1. You have to say what graph number 1 is. It is a graph that is a square with 3 circles in it. You have to be more descriptive. Know students by name in order to address them if you're a lecturer. If the blind student is there, it's always good to know even the first name, so that if you have to pose a question at that person, you can say to that person, you know, Janet, or, you know, Keisha, and ask them the question. Because some lecturers do that to ensure that the student is clear on what is being said and the student is focusing on what is being said. Or sometimes, you know, you doze off in the class and the teacher wants to get your attention to see, is it dozing or are you just too relaxed? And they might throw a question at you. But you cannot just, if you're not aware of the person's name and the person is blind, and it's good to walk in front of the person or touch the person on the shoulder and so that or the arm to say that, to get their attention. When using a video and the activities are not narrated, because you know, sometimes I know that when I was in psychology class, we had quite a few videos being shown, you know, depicting certain things. And sometimes you heard music and the person is acting up, but you don't know what is happening. And what is best is for somebody to be assigned to you or the lecturer to narrate what is happening on the screen. You know, like for example, depicting somebody with some sort of schizophrenia, maybe catatonic, and you want to say how the person is standing, the facial expression of the person, or the person is moving up and down, or if it's somebody who is paranoid, you know, the shifting of the eyes. Somebody has to be describing that for a person who is blind. So these, you know, one thing I want to tell you is that as lecturers or as persons who are tutors, be aware that sometimes when you give assignments, the class might not readily include a person with disabilities in a group, because people have had the experience, including myself, because people really think you're on the campus sometimes just to, it's more like occupational therapy. I think we're long past that now, but there are still people who will come on and believe that. So when you're assigning, if the person is not able to get into a group and come to you, you need to assign the person to a group, or the person you need to throw it back out. That Gloria is not in a group, and somebody, I can tell you some experiences I had when I just went on campus for my first program, right? And if you're not very self-confident, you might get really deflated and wonder, why am I here? When collecting cash, say you work in the bursary or wherever, and the cashier is collecting cash. I know sometimes we only use card, but just and some of us work maybe in places where we buy lunch and so on. So when you're collecting cash, when you get the cash from the person, like repeat the amount you have received. Yes, $350 or $500. This is a $500. When you're handing the change, so the person paid $500 and bought something for $150. You give back the person the change, putting the denominations together, right? Handing back the change, you put them together. So you put all the hundreds together and you say, okay, this is $100, this is $250, whatever. My math's right. No, it can't be 150. Yes, so it have 350 left. So this is 100, yeah? And this is a $50, or this is $150. So the person is aware, because we have ways of arranging our money so that we can look back at it and know what the notes are, you know. Assist with completing forms. I know that there are sometimes you go into admissions, you have to complete a form, or you have to direct the person where to sign. Be willing to be patient. And when you assist the person with completing the form, please repeat. Go back through so that the person is aware finally as to what is on the form. And if they have to sign it, they are sure of what they are signing. Making contact is our next topic. Introduce yourself. We said that before. Ask the person if they need assistance and how they need assistance. This is to say, don't always assume that a blind person walking about the campus needs your assistance. If you think, if they look a bit unaware of where they're going, you know, they stop and they're considering, yeah, we do that. Am I going the right way? They might not be mouthing it, but they might be thinking it. You know when somebody look a little lost. So then you can walk up to the person and say, I am a student here, can I help you? If you choose to give your name, which would be, because if the person meets you again, they would be able to, you know, identify you. And you can develop friendships out of that. Introduce yourself and ask, how can I assist you? All right, the next item is now we're going to be looking at, when I say assist, we're going to be looking at the correct guiding positions. There are. And we have some pictures. We're going to be having some slides, some pictures. I don't know if you're going to be able to make out everything. We did our best. So the first thing is what do we mean by sighted guiding? It means rather than say I am leading somebody, we don't use that term. You don't lead people, at least you lead them in an way. You're a leader and you're you know, leading them in some certain directions, having them to think a certain way or to, you know, work along with certain things. But we walk with person, or we guide them, or we assist them. So we're using the word. There's a special way to do this. As the person who is the guide, and I'm going to refer to you as the guide, and the person who is being assisted, right? So we're assuming in all of what I'm saying that the person you're assisting is a person who is blind. The person who is blind will take hold of your arm just above the elbow, the 4 fingers on the inside of your arm, the thumb on the outside. And they have to grip you. They're not squeeze you, you know, but they have to hold you firm enough. When they're doing that, you're to keep your arm relaxed and close to the side of your body. Just relaxed. When you're walking with the person, the next step is to remain half a step ahead of that person. And why we say half a step? Sometimes we give a joke and say that would mean that if the person is guiding you, if an obstacle comes up, they will fall over it first or fall in first. But the reality is that when you're a half a step ahead of the person, you don't really have to tell the person to step up or step down or turn. They will work with the movement of your body, right? So once you step down, they will feel that you have gone down a step, so they will know that there's a step. If you're going to turn, they will turn.
Gloria? Gloria? Ms. Goff, we're unable to hear you. Are you able to hear us? Ms. Goff, are you back with us now? Ms. Goff, if you're able to hear me, you need to unmute your mic. I've sent you the prompt asking you to unmute.
Okay, are you hearing me now?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Oh, yes,
I
sorry
think
about
the
that.
last thing persons heard is you were discussing the sighted guiding techniques and when you're turning with a person, and if we are going up a step or turning, that they should be half a step in front of you. So you can pick up from there.
Thank you very much. And I'm saying once you're walking with the person, you have to give clear verbal instructions, especially if the person is not familiar with the terrain, with the area. So you need to mention appropriate hazards, you know, like if there is a ditch, if there are steps, if there's a curb cut or a curb wall, or if you have a rough spot, or if you have to go down a steep hill or go up a steep slope, whatever it is. However, this is if the person is not familiar with the area and if the person is not using their cane. If the person is using their cane, then for steps, they would be able to pick that up, right? If you have to leave the person that you're guiding at any time, and I said this before, let the person know that you're leaving and also put them in contact with something, a wall, a chair, you know, a column, whatever it is, and give them a time as to when you'll be back. Don't just say soon come back. Jamaicans love say soon come back, and soon mean could be 1 hour, soon could be half an hour. Because go somewhere to do one thing and they get tied up with other things. So don't just leave them standing. There are people, of course, who are familiar with the area who will maybe take the cane and go up their business and say, okay, then we'll see you later at the library, or we'll see you later in the class, or we later on hall. Let's look at narrow spaces now. Okay, remember we just dealt with the sighted guiding in terms of walking with a person. Now, you're still walking with a person, but you may need to walk single file because when you have to move through a crowd or a narrow space, sometimes even between chairs or rows of chairs, right? So what you need to do then, remember you have a guiding arm. The arm that the person is holding on to is considered your guiding arm. Well, what you're going to do, rather than putting the blind person in front of you and pushing them forward, right? And say, go on, all right, go on now, go on, yes, go on, all right, stop. And then you come around in front of the person. No, that's kind of clumsy, right? So what you have to do is that you have to put that guiding arm behind you, just swing it behind your back, you know, like you're putting your hand across your back in the middle, in the lower back, or no, middle, Right, so you're swinging that arm behind you, and because the person is holding onto your arm, they will be behind you and hold the lower part of your hand, your arm, your lower arm, forearm, that time. And then the person will walk behind you until we come out of the maze. And then the person, you just swing back that arm, the guiding arm in front of you, to your side, and the person will move back in space. Easier, no talking, life flows smoothly, right? Okay, there's a picture depicting narrow space, and you can look at it and see how this person would walk with you. All right, we're coming down. The next time, going through doors. I'm not sure if I put that slide on, I think. You're going through a doorway, and you have to have the person on the hinge side. So you're going to be opening the door, and you're going to go through the door and let the person move from the hinge side, move from the hinge and hold on to the door, because the person will close the door behind you when they go out by finding the lock on the other side. It's necessary to be clumsily trying to move the person in front of you to go through the door, especially some of these heavy doors, and using your leg to block it so that it doesn't swing back and all this excitement. Just go through the door as normal and let the person you and close the door. The person can do that. Approach the door with the person on the guiding arm, as I said before, that's on the inside. So the person will use the free hand to hold it and close back the door. So I want the person managing the slide to move to the picture that shows how the door process goes, right?
We're on the slide, Gloria.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That the next thing we're going to be looking at is steps. We're going to be looking at how we manage with steps. Always approach steps and steer straight on. You know, don't go sideways and then swing around. The stairs are coming, the steps are coming up. Just continue walking. Pause just before the person is ready to step up. Sometimes you walk with person who think they're helping, and if the person is not using their cane, sometimes by the time they pause, your foot is already bumping again the step, and that causes accidents sometimes. Sometimes judgment is poor, and they start to tell you to step up 3 steps before you reach. So you find yourself stepping in here and coming back down. So it's best to pause just before the person step up and say, all right, we're at the beginning of the steps. And we're talking about somebody here who might not be using a cane. They will pick up that they are near the steps, but they will touch this step. But you tell them that it's steps. And it's not just a sidewalk, they're actually going upstairs, right? So you approach the step, right? Or the curb. You could be coming from the library and going over to, say, Mona School of Business, and you have to step down a step or step up a step, you know? All right, inform the individual if the step is higher or lower than normal, because we know that here, and everywhere you go, all the step, all these elevations are not the same height or the same, you know, depth. So then we have to ensure that if it's an unusual high step up, you have to say you have to step high. Or no, this one is deep. If the person is using a cane, they will pick that up. But quite a few people use the cane, or if they're walking somebody they're familiar with, they don't use the cane. So that's for steps. So let's look at stairs now. Tell the person you're approaching the stairs, and if it is going up or down, approach the stairs so that the free hand of the person you are guiding is on the hand at the handrail. It's kind of clumsy to have them on one side where there's no rail and then you switch them over. And we don't like to feel clumsy, you know, we like to be walking with you and feel comfortable. So if I'm on your right and you have to switch over, because yes, maybe the handrail is not on the guiding arm. So then you have to allow the person, guide them their hand to the rail, and the person will move up the stairs on their own, one by one, that everybody does. They might not be able to skip 2 and 3 steps like when you're rushing, right? When you reach a landing, you can say that's a landing if the person is not familiar with the area, and then they will know. When they get to the top step, then you say that's the last one, or the bottom one, then they will say that's the last one, right? And then we will have a picture here, restairs. Yeah. Let's go to sitting on a chair. Finally, we're getting. You grip the back of the chair with your guiding arm and keep remembering that the person would have their hand on your arm just above the elbow. So you're coming to the chair and you go to the back of the chair and you actually put your guiding arm, your palm on the chair. And the person will just slide down their hand and find the chair, the back of the chair, and know that I go around and find my seat and sit down comfortably, right? So you do that with the chair. If it's a car, you place the person hand on the car door or on the knob or handle of the car. It's sometimes difficult when you open the car for the person because the person, based on how the car door is shaped, might end up hitting their face on the door, his or her face on the door. So it's best to put their hand on the door itself, right? Back to the chair. If the back of the chair is against a wall, it may be easier to walk the person towards the chair and let the person kind of use their leg to put it on the chair, but tell them it's the front of the chair so that they're not feeling for the back of the chair. And then they will find their way around and sit down. And some seats don't have a back either. So if it's a backless seat, you can say, this is a bench, it doesn't have a back. So that the person don't swing back and lean back comfortable and then there is no back. Let the person sit down unaided. Because sometimes we're asking people to sit down and we're literally pushing them backwards down into the chair. And if our judgment is poor too, we can have the person ending up on the floor. General tips. Decision making, we are capable. Don't demoralize. Negative comments hurt. It also reduces self-esteem. So even if sometimes you walk in and people see you walking and they say, boy, you know, this person should be at home or somebody should be doing this for them. Why they have them on the streets? It's demoralizing and somebody might really feel bad. And if they're not, especially if they're newly blind, or newly disabled, they might really, because this applies to all types of disability. Empathize, and empathy don't mean sorry for. Empathy simply means that you put yourself in the person's position, and therefore, when you empathize, you may be able to consider things that maybe, for example, when I was growing up, my father used to allow me to do everything, but once the boys leave any sticks in the way for me to trip over, it's not allowed. That is empathy. You know, I'm able to operate, cannot leave obstacle in my way. So at the UE, if the person is not hearing well, or then the person needs to sit closer to the front. And therefore, you might even say to a student who, if the front row is full and you see John coming, and you know he's hard of hearing and used to sit at the front, you can just, excuse me, please give this gentleman a seat. You know, he normally sits here. Recognize our rights to live a normal life, accessing health, employment, education, family life, everything. In this case, especially education, because just like you, education is what will take us out of poverty. Education is what will make us more independent. Education is what will allow us to be able to contribute to the country, to ourselves, to our family. Privacy, our issues are ours. Permission should be granted just like everybody else to be told, for our issues to be told. Information is critical. Respect persons' individuality. And keep in mind that once you have the knowledge, and remember what I've told you here is not an exhaustive list, you know. There's a lot more that you can research on your own, but just keep these in mind, and I'm sure the presentation will be sent, because I don't expect you to remember everything, especially as we're not there to demonstrate physically, because that would internalize it, allow you to internalize it a bit more. Okay, and that ends my presentation, and I hand back to the moderator.
Thank you, Gloria, for that well-informed presentation. It was very detailed. You had lovely pictures displayed what was happening. And I know that the participants were very attentive to what was happening in today's discussion. So we'll now move over to a question and answer segment for your presentation. So persons can either post their questions in the chat or raise their hands to be acknowledged. Additionally, we welcome all feedback or suggestions that you may have. So we have one comment in the chat door from Gillian Mason. He says, great presentation, Ms. Goff, thanks. Okay. So with no further questions, we will move into the vote of thanks. We were supposed to have another presenter today. However, regrettably, we won't be able to benefit from his presentation due to his unavoidable absence. So, Mr. Morris, I will move to you now to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the Center for Disability Studies. Dr. Morris?
Yes, Chevelle.
Okay, great.
You're hearing me now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, sorry about that. A couple of things that I want to do before I move the vote of thanks, right? Because Gloria made some excellent interventions in her presentation. And I just want to ask Gloria a question. As a person with disability, Gloria, Ms. Goff?
Yes, I'm here.
As a person with
Hello?
disability, as a person with a disability, am I different from someone without a disability?
No, you're not. A person with a disability has the same person, biologically you're made up like everybody else. Yeah. If it so happens that you were born with a physical disability that maybe without legs, without eyes, or the mental capacity is not there, it doesn't mean that you're not a person just like everybody else. And
Right.
the other thing is that you have the same needs, the same need for food, water, shelter, the same aspirations. We have the same behavior, different behavior types, just like everybody else. Well, some of us who like parties, some who like church, some who have several women, some who have several men, some who have one partner. I mean, we're just like
Stop true
everybody
word
else.
for me.
No, I'm not. And I mean, we just have, we cook, we wash, we clean. Some of us don't like to cook. Some of us, you know, we have, just like the rest of the population, or individualities, right? So there are certain things that relate to different people, but we are just as human. And same way how you insult somebody who is not disabled and they feel bad, is the same thing. The only difference with us though, is that you might have to make some accommodation so that we can participate, we can be included in a more meaningful way.
And that is where reasonable accommodation comes into play that Professor Schiffer should have spoken about. And reasonable accommodation is any measure that is put in place to facilitate the inclusion and participation of persons with disabilities in a particular space. on an
Right.
equal basis with others. So, you know, giving time to students with disabilities to do their exams, extra time, is a part of the reasonable accommodation, because, you know, a blind person might choose to write Braille, and so it takes a longer time to be moving between reading and the Braille paper and typing the Braille information, and also, you know, providing sign language interpretation for a deaf person is a form of reasonable accommodation. You know, so anything that will facilitate the meaningful inclusion and participation of persons with disabilities in the educational space or at the workplace constitute reasonable accommodation and is legal nomenclature that is accepted internationally. All right.
And may I make a point here, Dr. Morris?
Yes, go ahead.
That what you might be hearing here today, in terms of the Disabilities Act, what happens at the Center for Disability Studies, and how you interact. It doesn't mean that's the only way to interact. But what I'm saying, how we interact with, we want you to keep that in mind, that it's not a simple matter, because you are able to see now, you're able to maybe walk around okay now. But with what is normally, we cannot guarantee where we'll be tomorrow, or where your family members will be. So what we're saying to you today is not just for use on the campus. No, it's for use at home, at your church, in your community, because somebody for you or somebody you know might have a disability. And what we have been talking about today, you might be able to advise them on the Disability Act. You might be able to advise a student who comes on and those might not know, or somebody you know want to go to university and say, but how am I going to manage? How am I going to manage? You might say, no, man, they have a center there who can assist you with, you know, readers and so on. So we just want you to take the workshop very seriously, because what is being disseminated, information being disseminated is for a lifetime.
And understand, I want my lecturer colleagues and administrators to understand this, that disability is not something for them. It is not for the thems. It can happen to me. It can happen to you. It can happen to I. You can be walking one day and just slip, a slight slip, and you drop and you tear somewhere, and that places you in a disabling condition. I was talking to a very good friend of mine who was a long-standing advocate for persons with disabilities for years. Reverend Garnet Roper gave me my first job as a consultant with the NYS back in 1998. And he, whilst he was chairman for the board at NYS, ensured that persons with disabilities were brought on stream in NYS programs. And I met him last week and he was in a wheelchair, and I said to him, what happened? And he said he was coming back from Africa and he had a stroke. And in the process of developing the stroke, he developed a physical disability and is in a wheelchair. So disability respects absolutely no one. Our country is replete with accidents on the road every day, and road accidents contribute significantly to disabling conditions locally and globally. And it can happen to any individual, any individual. So we have to make sure that we treat and relate with these individuals in a manner that is equivalent to how we would want to be treated if we had a disability. And I always say, you may be able-bodied today and disabled tomorrow. So respect the disabled. And with that in mind, I want to thank all my colleagues in the Faculty of Social Sciences for coming on board and participating. I want to thank Ms. Chevelle Gerson for anchoring ably the session today. I want to thank Dr. Christine Clark for coming in as Deputy Dean and bringing welcome and opening remarks. I want to thank Ms. Shamali Cardoza for her excellent presentation, Ms. Gloria Goff for her excellent presentation. Sorry that Professor Schiffer couldn't make it today. He sent me a notification apologizing. He's in Switzerland and they are 7 hours ahead, but he has promised me that he will join the session tomorrow. So if you want to be a part of the session to hear his presentation on reasonable accommodation, he will start presenting at about 11:06 tomorrow. And I tell you, he is the finest that I have heard anywhere in the world on constitutional law and disability law. And so if you are able, you can join us for that session between 11:05 and 12 tomorrow. But that means you would have to re-register for the session tomorrow. The session tomorrow is for the larger UWI family. This was specifically for the members of the Faculty of Social Sciences. Want to thank Mrs. Francesca Lloyd McDavid for her usual excellent support. I want to thank Mr. Joshua Bell as well for his usual turning technical support. Thanks to Jason and Shavane for their support in this endeavor as well. And thanks to you all, the participants, for coming. And I must tell you that this is the first of a series, right? You would have done 3 hours today. If you register for the next session that we are aiming to do the first time in the first month of 2023, that's January, we are going to be giving a certificate of completion for all those participants who would have come through the series, all right? So make sure that you stay tuned, and we will also email you to remind you to come and register for the next series when we start. Thank you very much, and God bless you.